We will finish discussing watching the entirety of the MCU in chronological order with Phase 3, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Welcome to Durbania. I'm Durbin, and this is my viewing of Phase 3 of the MCU in chronological order. I already got my two other videos up going through Phase 1 and Phase 2 in chronological order, so you can feel free to go over and check those out as you wish if you haven't already done so. Right now, I'm going to dive into Phase 3 of the MCU in chronological order. This one was kind of an interesting one to dive into in chronological order, and a huge thank you to my buddy Austin Burke over on his channel. He did a video all about this, kind of what inspired me to do this, picking up after the movie Ant-Man, Captain America, Civil War, Black Panther, Spider-Man Homecoming, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Doctor Strange, Thor Ragnarok, and Avengers Infinity War. That is the chronological order in which I watched Phase 3, and it was very interesting to watch it in that way. And you know, like Doctor Strange can almost fit anywhere because it's kind of like the weird timeless one. It deals with the time stone.
Oh, people used to think that I was funny. Did that work for you? All right.
Point is yeah, so you can kind of do these things in slightly different orders and stuff. This is not counting post-credit scenes, because that Ant-Man post-credit scene kind of messes things up a little bit. But, you know, if you kind of cut out that post-credit scene and kind of just look at the majority of the film and where they take place and watch them in that chronological order, it's interesting how it kind of fits together and it makes a lot of sense. First off, kicking off Phase 3 with Captain America Civil War and going up to Infinity War, it's kind of interesting because it's this bookend. So you have the Avengers, which is Earth's mightiest heroes, over here on this side of the bookend. And where it starts is them dividing and falling. A house divided against itself cannot stand. The one hope we could have against such an enemy like Thanos is now divided and fallen. So what are we gonna do? Earth's mightiest heroes are now divided. How are they gonna fight Thanos? So when you watch it that way, knowing we're going up to Infinity War and seeing the beginning of Phase 3 being the absolute downfall of the Avengers, it's kind of an interesting way to dive into this and kick things off. But then when you do it in this chronological order, here's what makes a lot of sense. So first you go from Captain America Civil War into Black Panther, and that makes sense because in the very beginning of Black Panther, they talk about, like, there's a news report that T'Challa is watching, and it talks about how his father died a week ago.
The beloved ruler was one of many confirmed dead after a terrorist attack at the United Nations a week ago.
Black Panther takes place within a week after Civil War. So it makes a ton of sense that as soon as you're done watching Civil War and Black Panther gets introduced to us in that movie, to move straight into his solo movie. Then we continue on with the effects of Civil War and dive into Spider-Man Homecoming after that, which is about 2 months after the events of Civil War. So we get a little bit of the fallout, we kind of see where Tony Stark is, and so you can see easily how he walked that path where that fear began in Avengers and built through the rest of the series up to Age of Ultron. And now here he is, still with fear, but trying to amend his ways a little bit, mentoring young Peter Parker and wanting him to be a far better hero than he ever was. So it's kind of cool to follow it in that order and see Stark fall to that fear and then trying so hard to rise above it and mentor a hero that would be a better hero than he was because he sees all that potential in Peter. So it's kind of cool to see that fallout spread through Spider-Man Homecoming. And then it makes sense to dive into Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is now about 2 years after Captain America Civil War. So there is quite a vast time jump here. I saved off that end-credit scene for after watching Infinity War, pretending it was a mid-credit scene in Infinity War, because chronologically that's exactly where that would fit. Then finally we dive into Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange is a strange one. Ah!
Oh, people used to think that I was funny. Did that work for you? All right.
Doctor Strange is interesting because the timeline is so weird in this movie. Like, I really feel like the beginning of this film is probably right after the events of Civil War. But when he gets in that car accident, the bad stuff happens to his hands. He's calling up all the doctors. He's going through therapy, desperately trying to find a doctor, or could be like a year and a half. I mean, honestly, we don't know. But I'm betting you that that is a long period of time, all that montage of him trying to find the doctors to do the experimental surgeries and the hand therapy. But then let's not forget that finally when he makes it to Kamatage, he's probably there for a while. They make a big deal about how he's a fast learner, how he can memorize things, his body's asleep, so he's astral projecting out and reading the books and all of that stuff. So we're really seeing the fact that he's got this photogenic memory on top of the fact he has a natural talent for magic. So we do pick up on the fact that he's probably learning this really, really fast. Yet, there is an unknown passage of time that seems to occur from when he arrives at Comitage to finally when he steps out into New York City. And so it's kind of interesting when you dive into that one, the timeline, because it feels like Doctor Strange actually covers a huge amount of time. So you could really watch it almost anywhere in Phase 3 as long as you're watching it before Ragnarok and Infinity War. But I like putting it right here. And what I liked about putting it right here is so we get a Doctor Strange origin story, then we get Doctor Strange in Thor Ragnarok, and that works really well for the Doctor Strange post-credit scene, then to watch Ragnarok right after that. Then you go into Infinity War, so it's 3 back-to-back movies with Doctor Strange right after his introduction, and I feel like that's a really cool way to visit that and to dive into that. Then, of course, after Doctor Strange, we go into Thor Ragnarok. Now, here's what I like about doing Thor Ragnarok right before Infinity War. And it's an obvious one. Post-credit scene where Thanos' ship arrives right as all of the Asgardian refugees are trying to make their way to Earth, which really takes Thor's journey and makes it 10 times more emotional. On the one hand, it kind of undercuts Thor Ragnarok, all the risk and all the stuff that they did to get the people of Asgard to Earth to save the people, the battle he went through, causing Ragnarok itself, all of that to defeat Hela, all of that to get to Earth, only to run into Thanos somewhere in space and about half of his crew get killed. And then you're sitting there wondering, is Korg alive?
He's alive, guys. What was your question again, bro?
Last but never least, we dive into Avengers Infinity War. And of course, chronologically thus far, this one goes last. It is the culmination of all of these MCU movies building up to this moment, the actual Infinity War, the gathering of the stones, the introduction to these Infinity Stones, meeting all of these superheroes and all of these villains, and now finally bringing it all together in this ultimate battle, which is just amazing. And one of the things that's awesome about it is the attention to detail with Tony Stark's story arc. Because starting with Avengers, like I said earlier, it's that fear of aliens. In fact, in Age of Ultron, he has a very fascinating line.
That up there, that's the Endgame.
Bum, bum, bum. It is so cool knowing with Endgame coming up and then watching this in chronological order, all the little Easter eggs that they got throughout the MCU. So I really cannot wait to dive into Endgame. What did you think of this and watching the MCU in chronological order? Are you excited for Endgame? Let's talk in the comments. While you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit the bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next ranking video, movie review, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.